Okay, you see Zora is running about, so that's good.
I'm about to get on my laptop in just a second. I'm walking upstairs right now.
Okay. All right.
So funny.
We'll start with the altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dangwa je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Darpa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe. Manam ka dam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dog now dang drel nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe zhang zhu bren po she to pa zha. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Deshe du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma song ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities and the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Transcend sawa dangur pa je pe pao dan la ma dam pa nam la kab su chi o. Yidam kil gorgi la sok nam la kab su chi o. Sangye chom den de nam la kab su chi o. Tam pe cho nam la kab su chi o. Pa pe ge du nam la kab su chi o. Pa wo ka dro cho kyung song me song yes she gi chang dang dem ba nam la kab su chi o. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shangshu Ningpo Chiki Bar Sangye Namla Kyabsuchi Chodang Shangshu Sampayi Soklang Deshin Kapsuchi Jetar Nonggi Deshegi Shangshu Tukni Ke Padang Shangshu Sampe La Pala De Dagrim Shin E Patar Deshin Drola Pandandu Shangshu Samni Kegishin Deshin Duni La Pala Rimpa Shindu La Pajio. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chonam La Shangshu Badu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Jin Soki Pe Sonamgi Drola Penshir Sangye Jupasho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pesem centam she dewadang dewe gurdang dempajorchi. Dog now dang now gi gudang drawa jorchi. Dog now me pe de wa dang mi drawa jorchi. Ne ring jag dang ni dang drawe dang namla ne pa jorchi. So now we turn to the 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva. So these past 2 Sundays, we just were studying and doing the practice for Vajrasattva. So it'd be very good to include this mantra into our opening prayers. And what this helps us to be mindful of is the mistakes that we make, the errors that we make when we're doing our practices. And plus, when we are out and about doing different things in our cars and going out and going shopping and dealing with other people and so on, the errors that we make at that time too, to confess the confusions that we've created for ourselves, the confession of those things that we've created for other people and so on, the non-virtues. So to include this into our opening prayers is very beneficial. So what we'll do is we'll read this once in English, and then we'll recite it twice in the Sanskrit. Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow, to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. We cut through all confusion, all dualistic nature. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha. This mantra is also in the 101 book, pages 8 and 9, in the book that I have. So, and then we go to page 12, the Sagari Mati Requested Sutra, in English, please. Likewise, be extinguished. Extinguish all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so that when I am victorious, all pure radiance melts into me completely purified. Take all this knowledge, food, and drink peacefully. Enjoy it and be satisfied, so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles, all general obstacles. Maras are defeated by this gesture of the Buddha. By reciting this mantra, may all the Maras be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated. Okay, thank you very much. So just to, I put an envelope in the mail for all of you and contains some information that we're going to be talking about this coming Sunday when we're going to be talking about the 5 Buddha families. So we're moving ahead with our Buddhism, Buddha Practice 201, and we'll be doing a practice on the 5 Buddha families. So it should be very good. So keep an eye on your mail. I imagine you'll get it by the end of the week. Today, we're going to be talking about going back to the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. Before I do that, I just reminded myself, last week we did the King of Samadhi, the King of Aspiration prayers. Did anybody have time to recite the King of Aspiration? Good, Gary did. Very good. Yeah, so it's good to get in the habit of doing it as often as you can, because it is a great affirmation. It is great to keep our wheels on the track. for our practices, for our studies, to keep our mindfulness very, very in front of ourselves, to help us to develop our one-pointed mindfulness on the Dharma practice. So I encourage everybody to integrate the King of Aspiration prayers into your routine. Okay, so now we're going back to the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. And we talked, the last time we were talking about, we were kind of combining the first chapter, the second chapter, and the third chapter. So the first chapter was the pure nature, the Buddha nature, the primary cause. And the second chapter is the working basis, our precious human life. And the third chapter is the contributory cause, the spiritual master, the teacher, the guru. So this is also the entranceway into the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So if you have that prayer, you should have that with you somewhere, and to be integrating that and to be mindful of that at the same time. So this working basis, this precious human life, is the first of the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, the precious human life. So I just want to go over the elements that are expressed in the eight in the precious human life, the 8 leisures and the 10 endowments. We've talked about this before, and in the booklet, in the page of text, these are listed, the 8 leisures. So the 8 leisures, as being a human being, is to be free from the 8 unfavorable conditions. So these 8 favorable conditions are that we're not born into a hell realm, we're not born into the hungry ghost realm, we're not born into the animal realm, that we are not born as barbarians among barbarians, and that we are not born as a long life God. So these are part of the leisures that we have, that we're not consumed by these things. We have a precious human life. We may be subject to all these things. We may be subject to the demons of the hell realms that we create within ourselves. We may be subject to the hungry ghost realm of the miserliness, of the selfishness, of the greediness that we create for ourselves. We may be subject to the dullness of being an animal, of not being aware of who we are, where we are, being able to make changes in our environment and so on as animals, like that. So we're free from that. But we could revert to that if we allow ourselves to move away from our practice, and not to be as a barbarian, to be going around and hurting other beings and thinking that we're doing good things and so on, and not to be born as a long life God, thinking that that we are self-omnipotent on our own, and that we are not part of the a continuum of understanding worldview as being part of our Buddha nature. So that also that these wrong views, that we don't understand karma, we don't understand the four noble truths, the eightfold path, that the eightfold path will indeed lead to cessation. One of the wrong world views is that although we may study and try to practice the Eightfold Path, that it will not lead to the cessation of suffering. But indeed it will, if we are dedicated to the practice and so on. So, and then there's been a Buddha who has been in the world, who has brought us teachings. There's been awakened one. There continues to be awakened ones. There are Buddhas around us now. You may have met Buddhas. There are Buddhas that you have the potential to be Buddha yourself. You may have recognized, you may have had a realization of that true nature within yourself, even just for a glimpse. So that there is Buddha, there is that awakened nature that we all have within ourselves. And that we have a leisure from not being born as a stupid person, that we have our senses intact, and we're able to process information. We're able to understand. We have a clear thinking and so on. We have a good, healthy body, and that we have the education and so on that we need to be able to process all of this. So this is part of what it is to be a precious human being. So if you've got that text, the the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, that's something that you would benefit from by incorporating into your routine. So the text looks like this, and I know that you have copies of that. I've sent that to you before, and we've talked about it before at length. So to refresh your memory of these things is very important. The next thing of the four thoughts that turn to mind is the 10 endowments or the 10 enrichments that we have as human beings, and that there's 5 external and there's 5 internal. The 5 external are that we're born where a Buddha has arrived in this world. That there is a Buddha who taught the precious Dharma, the pathway to enlightenment, that the Dharma continues to be taught, and that there is a Sangha, there is a community of people to maintain the teachings, and that there is love and kind support to continue the Dharma practice. So those are the 5 external of the 10 endowments. So we have that within our midst. So this is a great blessing that we have to be born in this lifetime like that. The internal enrichments that we have is that we're born as a human being. We're not born as a hungry ghost. We're not born as a hell being. We're not born as an animal or an insect. We're born as a human being. And we're born in an area that continues to have the holy teachings, that the teachings are still available to us. And we're born with the full faculties of the senses intact. Now, I know that, this was talked about many, 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 hundreds of years ago. And if you were blind, that was a very tragic thing. If you didn't have your hearing, that was a very tragic thing. But today we're able to make compensations through the technology and so on. So we may be losing our senses as we get older. Some of us can't hear so good. Some of us can't see so good. But we have things to help us to be able to maintain our awareness, to be able to maintain the faculties of the sense objects and so on, recognizing things and so on like that. So we have that, and that's a great blessing. This is what we say, the internal part of the internal blessings that we have as a human being, and that we haven't committed the 5 heinous crimes. So I would assume that all of us, we haven't, committed murder. We haven't killed father. We haven't killed mothers. We haven't killed Buddhas and holy ones. That we haven't caused an injury to the Buddha or to the teachings, to the facilities, and that we haven't created a schism in the community, a schism in the Sangha. We haven't tried to drive people away or steal people away or anything like that. So we maintain a level of purity which keeps us internally, keeps us as a precious human being. And that we have a strong devotion to the Dharma teachings. So this is what keeps us coming to the 101 teachings, going to the temple when we can, reading the books, meditation, doing the practices, etc., is all part of the Dharma training, the Dharma teachings. So these are all part of the 10 enrichments of being a human being. So this is all part of a precious human being, as I just said. So all this is noted here in the booklet that you have is the outline for the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So you have that. The Jewel Ornament of Liberation goes into a great detail of this. So right now I'm just reintroducing this to you to remind you that you have this information, because sometimes we forget and so on. And part of our practice should be having these things in front of ourselves and contemplating, thinking about these things and so on. And as we do that, it will lead us to our meditation, where there is this period of no thought, where we have that moment of peace over and over again. We can recreate that, allow that to manifest over and over again by doing this. So also in this chapter, this is all part of chapter 2, the working basis of being a human being. So as also, we have the 3 faiths. So the 3 faiths are very strong, very powerful, very interesting for us to recognize. We have the faith in the Dharma. We have the faith in the teacher. We have the faith in all the scriptures, the books that we read and everything, that they are going to lead us to a place, to a mindfulness, to an awareness that is beyond where we might be now, out of our ignorance, out of our confusion, to a point of being able to recognize our pure nature, our true, our Buddha nature, to be able to help us to recognize that we have this trusting. We're trusting in the teacher. We're trusting in the books. We're trusting in the process of the teachings themselves, and as a graduated, progressive steps that we take. So we've been over this a number of times, talking about doing the opening prayers, doing the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, doing the stages of meditation, getting to the shamatha meditation and the vipassana meditation, and then the generation stage and the completion stage of the deity yoga practices. So we can't do all that all at once. We do it in a little bit at a time. It's a progressive stage, and we need to do it in that way, in a progressive way. And we may have gotten to a point where we just go through things quite quickly because we're very familiar with it, and then we get to something that might be in the middle stages or something, and we can spend more time there. We don't have to go through every single thing and be spending a lot of time doing the opening prayers because we're familiar with them. On the other hand, there may be times when things are happening in our lives that are very trying to us, that we need to be to remember the meaning of the opening prayers. So although we may have been reciting them for years and we've even memorized them, but there may be times when we need to really engage in those opening prayers and utilize them to put our wheels back on the track again. So we need to go through these processes over and over again, the same process over and over again, in order to be able to maintain our one-pointed mindfulness on our true nature, our being Buddha, our being awakened. So we have faith in this process. We have faith in the teacher who is reminding of this, who is giving us the books, who is showing us the teachings and guiding us through that. We have faith in that. And then we have a yearning faith, a longing faith that is within ourselves, that has been leading us to this, that made us want to find these things out, to understand these things. And maybe we've been through processes of different traditions, different religious traditions, different philosophic traditions, whatever. And we were left feeling a little bit unsatisfied. So we had this yearning that there's still something, there's this connection point, this nexus that I'm looking for to be part of, and that's moving me forward. And maybe that's what has brought us to where we are now, to be able to be in this group, to be talking about these things, to be able to go to the temple, to be able to do the practices and the readings and all these things, this yearning faith that we have, that we trust this faith within ourselves. So the first faith is the trusting in the teachings, trusting in the teacher. The second one is the trusting within yourself that you have this yearning that is moving you toward this. The third faith is what we call the clear faith. And the clear faith is when you begin to have some realization, you begin to have some experience with trusting in the teacher, trusting in your yearning, and we see that, oh yes, this is working. This is doing exactly what I want to do. It's cutting through emotions. It's cutting through confusion. It's cutting through non-virtue. All the things that we've considered to be these obstacles and so on and seem to be insurmountable. Now we have a system by which we can cut through those things, and we can realize at least a moment of peace, a moment of quietude, and we have trust in that. We have trust in the clear faith that this is working because we've experienced it. And then these three faiths, you see, become the motivation for us to continue to progress along this pathway to enlightenment, to become a precious human being, not an ordinary human being, but a precious human being. Om, Ah, Hung, the body, speech, and mind, that my ordinary body, speech, and mind becomes inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. So this is a progression. It takes time. It doesn't happen right away. It doesn't happen like flipping a light switch. There's periods where we recognize our body to be like the body of the Buddha, the enlightened one. Our mental mind, our speech is very much, sometimes we have that recognition that, oh yes, this wisdom is coming up. I recognize this. And this is, so it may not last for a long time, but we recognize, we see that it does happen. And then with the spirit, with the spiritual body, the heart mind, that we begin to have experience with that. And it gives us the sense that, yes, we do recognize that we do have this Buddha nature within ourselves, that we are potential Buddha. And maybe we think sometimes like Buddha, we want to be Buddha. All these different things coming together within our body, speech, and mind. So these are the three faiths, bringing all this together. If we don't engage in the practices, if we don't engage in these teachings, we're not going to have those kinds of experiences. Or even if we do have those experiences, we're not going to recognize them. We're good people. You know, we have good karma. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So we are spiritual beings, whether we realize it or not. But if we realize it, how special that is. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to not just recognize it, but we're trying to sustain it, to maintain it, that it becomes everything that we do through bodhicitta, that we become bodhicitta, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So this is the working basis of being a precious human being. Anybody have any questions or comments about this? Let's have a little discussion about that. So I'd like you to kind of search in and think about this, and whether you're hearing this for the first time or that you've heard this a number of times because you've been in this group a number of times, and how this lands on you, and have you found proof in this? Have you had the experience of the clarity where you've seen that this has worked? Or has it been an obstacle? Has there been problems that haven't allowed you to do that? What would you think about that?
I once had moments, maybe, I couldn't tell you, was it 1 second or 10, of pure clarity once when meditating many years ago. And I haven't experienced it since, but it motivates me to be here now, to be a part of this Sangha, if you will, and to learn from you and to meditate and to practice my meditations, because I want to experience more and more of that, not to become a Buddha, but for my own clarity and my own peace of mind. And as you say, to cut through the torture sometimes of an ordinary life. Not that I'm set upon, but life can be torturous. And to cut through it somehow is a very appealing idea. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for
That's
asking.
very good. What was the method that you used to have that moment of pure meditation, that meditative experience? What was the method?
I was doing TM
Oh, I see.
back in the early 70s, and then gave up meditation for many, many years, and then tried Zen and didn't care for that particularly. It was brutal, and I thought pointlessly so. And then tried to return to meditation on my own, and that was good for 2 weeks or 3, but without support, I fell away. And then I discovered Buddhism, and our friend Pema Ramanan told me about you, and so I jumped on it. As I said to you when I first met you, I'm hungry, and I remain so.
Well, good. Did you have a mantra that you recited at that time when you were doing the TM?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you remember what that was?
Yes.
What was it?
Do you want to know it?
Sure.
Sharing.
Oh, was it Sharing?
Yes.
And do you know what the meaning to it? What was the meaning for you?
I have no idea.
I see, but it was just it was just a word.
It was
that
a
you-
word that was given me when I initiated. It was a mantra that I was told would be mine and mine alone.
Very good.
Yeah. And I took that very much to heart. And there are times now, Lance, when I'm trying to clear the crap as I meditate, that I instinctively go back to that mantra.
Right.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but it happens. As I
Oh
say,
no, that's very good. That's really good. Yeah. Mine was Eko Nam Suri Wa Guru. Eko Nam Sat Nam Suri Wa Guru.
that's great.
And there was a book that I had. It was called How to Know God. And I used that as a mantra for quite a bit. I had a lot of success with that. To know God. I used that as a mantra, to know God, to know God, to know God. Yes. And it was very effective. So you can create your own mantra.
I know that. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yes.
Zara,
I know you want.
I have one too. Actually, when I went through the TM process, I was given like the similar protocol where they give you. So Lance, I thought anyone else who wants to comment, they were supposed to give you sounds that don't actually have a contextual or conceptual meaning, so that you don't focus on it as a thing. It's just like meant to be the replacement. Is that true? I always thought that was what. Mine is 2 syllables as well, and they said you're supposed to keep it secret. It's a top secret.
Right. Well, they didn't want anybody to contaminate it, because somebody might say something disparaging or laugh at you or something like that, or you give them wrong information, something like that. I think is a simple explanation for that. But yeah, I mean, it's a device that you're using to develop one-pointed mindfulness. That when your mind wanders, you bring it back to this device. It's meditation with an object. When we are studying shamatha meditation, we start with meditation with an object, focus on an object. So whether it's a flower or it's a picture or something rather benign, but it's just something that you bring your mind back to. And then the next step after that in shamatha meditation is meditation without an object, where you're not focusing on any object at all. So that's the way we do it, and so on like that. But any technique is really good, and whatever it takes to bring your mind to it. Like I said, you can create your own mantra, and it can be very, very, very effective if you use it. You got to use it, otherwise it's not going to work.
Right, that makes sense. Thank you. I didn't have anything necessarily to contribute other than to make a remark on something, Mark, you said. After doing this for several years now, I feel like I'm, at least this is me, maybe, and it's a little ego driven. However, I feel in touch with my spirituality for many more glimpses daily. Like I am every day when I'm in meditation, I become, for me, I describe it as the spiritual warrior within myself. Like that's how I'm like, there she is. And it's maybe for like 30 seconds. But it's getting bigger. My point is, before it was all I could think about is how angry I was at other people for messing with me. When I was constantly like in my head about the to-do list of when I'm done with this meditation, I'm going to write that email. And right now I'm going to work it out while I'm pretending to meditate, but I'm going to draft the email in my head. And then I'll feel really good that I meditated because I said I did. And now I'm actually meditating. And then I'm like, there she is. Oh, I literally think about the good things I'm going to do after I'm done meditating. I'm like, I'm going to, like my karma, like cause and result. I'm like, these are the intentionality. It's all finally happening where I'm like, oh, this is what Lance has been talking about for years. The peace is coming. And now it's like, before it was 0 seconds. Now it's like minutes within the meditation.
Do you ever have something that rises up that maybe you don't quite understand, but you have some familiarity with it, and then you have to look it up? Say, well, what does this mean? Something pops up into your head or something. What does compassion really mean? What does emptiness really mean? Does it give you cause to want to go and research it a little bit?
Oh yeah, like I was really trying to understand loving kindness as an action, like as a generalized action, like because I'm really big on, I always tell people I love when people talk the talk, but are you walking the walk? Like it's two things. Integrity is believing and doing. And I was like, I think I understand it. I don't know if I'm doing it. I don't know if whatever that looks like in action. So that's a recent example. I've been really trying to consider that, and then really understanding compassion for myself. These are just things I'm thinking about because I feel like I'm constantly angry at myself right now for not being a better person. But I had already shared this about a month ago where I'm struggling with that privately, where I catch myself, and someone told me just to be an observer, like observe it and don't judge it. Like someone actually gave me that wisdom. They're like, just observe that you had that thought about yourself and don't judge it as a good or bad event. And that's actually helped.
Good.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's all right. No, terrific. Thank you very much. Somebody else, would you like to comment on how this has been manifesting? Brendan, go right ahead.
Zara, how can I, what you just said, and I spanked one of my sons 6 years ago, and I don't believe in spanking. I hate spanking. We should never use violence against our kids, and I did it once, and it eats me up to this day. And what you said, it just, I really relate to that. And so how are we going to help each other, right? Just overcome that and forgive ourselves, right? We have to. There's no other choice, But yeah, anyway, I didn't expect to go there, but thank you for that, Sarah. But anyways, I was in New Jersey yesterday at our family picnic. We hadn't been up there since COVID, my in-laws, and just such a different experience from 2018. 2018, I was living in the hungry ghost realm. I was self-absorbed. I was all kinds of bad things, and just thinking about the Dharma path in the past year, what that's done for me, and being up there and being able to, how can I support my wife? How can I let her spend time with her family while I'm taking care of her special needs child, and going into the house and letting her cool off? And I don't know, is that I'm getting older, or is it the Dharma path? But I always want to blame the Buddha. I always want to say the Buddha is helping me do this. And that's what I always try to tell people. So
Well, let's say giving credit to the Buddha,
giving credit to the Buddha, yes.
or making an offering to the Buddha. That that's what we're doing. We're offering our ordinary mundane life to the Buddha to become Buddha, and the Buddha's within ourselves.
And it's amazing the time compression when you're really serving other people's needs, and you're not in the hungry ghost realm, and it goes like that so quickly while you're helping other people, as opposed to serving your own selfishness. So yeah, very much so, Lance.
Well, that's really good. Yes. So when you were up there and you hadn't seen these folks for a couple of years, then, right?
5 years, yeah, exactly.
So were you looking at it through a new lens? Is
Yes.
that fair to say that?
Very much so. It was all about, how can I help my kids have a good time? How can I help my wife have a good time? And when that paradigm shifts, it's amazing. Yeah.
Within yourself, was there a sense of peacefulness, a sense of quietude? Not that you were quiet, that you weren't saying anything, but there was just this peace of mind that you were taking with you.
I knew that I was doing what I was being called to do at that time. And yes, there was.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody else like to comment? Okay. Matthew, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what to say about it. I mean, a few things I was thinking. Well, I guess to your question now, I mean, definitely have had over the years and recently, I guess, certain glimpses or experiences that are meaningful or powerful to me through some way through Dharma practice, meditation practice.
Are you looking at your life in a different way than you had before?
Yeah. I think for me, that's one of the biggest things so far is just framing my life in a different way and being able to embody different things being important to me. Less ego driven type of things. And it's always, since I found the Dharma, given me that that sense of direction, or maybe refuge, I guess, in Dharma language could be called it, or something. And noticing too, I guess, kind of to Zara's point, and to Brendan's point of, noticing at those moments more and more where it's I could be doing this nice thing for someone. I don't really feel like it right now, not out of a negative feeling towards them, but I just want to zone out and do this other thing, or it's inconvenient for me, that my percentage of doing the nice thing is significantly higher than it used to be. And then the other thing, and then I'll stop yapping, is that I was thinking, when you're talking about the three faiths and the yearning one especially, and I've been reflecting a lot since something, I don't remember which group it was, you were asking us about joy in our practice and the motivation of trying to figure out how to I realize my practice doesn't have enough of that, enough joy. And when you're talking about the yearning faith, it was making me think back to when I first started learning about the Dharma or Buddhism at all, or spirituality at all. Eastern spirituality, when it was very magical at that time. It's kind of like the beginner's mind type of thing. The practices and everything was very, there's a certain kind of magic and wonder and awe and everything to it that has been lost, that I think I need to get back. Those are my thoughts.
Did in the past, do you think that you looked at your life in terms of your obstacles or your sufferings or the non-virtues, the difficulties, and that's who I was, and I kept falling into these same kinds of traps? Did you have did you think like that?
Yeah, I guess in a sense, and it was very
Were
much.
you self-defeating? Was it a self-defeating kind of a mindset?
I mean, self-defeating could be the name of my autobiography, Lance. But yeah, so I'm joking, but yeah, self-defeating. And I guess just this thing of like, I have to, which is still there to some degree, but it's like through my ego, like I have to achieve, I have to do all of these things, I have to be special, I have to, all of this stuff to be able to feel okay. And finally seeing like, that's not going to ever, it's never going to work. And like, there's this whole other kind of path and other parts of me that I can embrace, and gives me a confidence to be different than, I don't know, what I was raised to be or something.
So now, is it just something you just stumbled on in this conversation, or is it something you've been thinking about, and fairly recent, that you're looking for joy, that you're looking for that excitement, for that enthusiasm or something like that?
It's something I've been thinking about more since you had asked us about it before. Because there's still times too where it's like, I don't want to at times do the practice. Like a lot of times I do, and there's an enjoyment to it and I look forward to it and stuff, but a lot of times it does feel like almost a chore that I have to do for myself in ways that other things don't. And I feel like a lot of that is yeah. And I will say, even, now that literally now I feel that joy right now and that peace. And like earlier before the group, I was doing this, like loving kindness, compassion kind of motivation, really trying to like bring up that feeling, like stoke that feeling in me that brought a lot of joy, and is something that, I've heard the Dalai Lama talk about with like using the analytical meditation and trying to bring that feeling and then just sit in the feeling. And when you lose it, using the analytical part, or the, stuff with the mother sentient beings, and then get in trying to stoke that fire of that compassion feeling and everything.
Well, good. And just as a commercial for what I was saying earlier about, what we're going to start talking about this coming Sunday, is the 5 Buddha families and all the different Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so on that are associated. That's the enjoyment body. So that's what we're going to be talking about, to be able to recognize yourself as all these myriad forms of the enjoyment body. And it brings great happiness, it brings great satisfaction, and it is how we overcome, our difficulties and break through all the time, cutting through, breaking through, those obstacles that we didn't even know we had. And so I just want to remind you that that's where we're headed in our next, state of talking about Buddhism 201 is that enjoyment body. Yes, Brendan.
Lance, a quick question. We've been talking a little bit about, where we were previously and where we've come to now. And, for those of us on the Dharma path, before we were on that path, I've taken my son aside, and, 98.5% of the time, I've been an awesome dad. But, we have parental fails, we call them, where we made a mistake and we apologize to our kids and we say that was wrong and that's not what grown-ups do. As a Buddhist, how do we forgive ourselves? How do we, what is the Buddhist view on that as to how we move beyond that and say, I made a mistake, but this is, I don't do that now. How do
Well,
we
there's
do
a
that
number of things, and not the most powerful thing is the Vajrasattva practice that we did on Sunday, and we talked about the week before, and so on. is the confession that, oh, I did make a mistake. Oh, I did something wrong. Oh, I was non-virtuous, etc. And then admitting that to ourselves, and then having a process in which to forgive ourselves and to purify ourselves and commit ourselves to not doing it again. And if we do it again, that we start the process over where we forgive ourselves again, so it really is it's a practice of both wisdom and it's a practice of compassion, but it's focused on the confession or the purification that we sometimes don't measure up to that which we would like to measure up to. So that Vajrasattva practice is very potent in that way. The four powers of the remorse, the remedy, the reliance, and and not to do it again. Yes. So that's my answer to that. So there's a practice for all these things, and one Buddha, and all the Buddhas, because all the Buddhas, the essence of all the Buddhas is bodhicitta. But the difference between the Buddhas is their activity. So each one of those Buddhas has a doorway that leads to these other Buddhas and so on. And so that, again, that's what we're going to be talking about this coming week, coming up and so on. So we begin to see the nexus of all of that. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. It does.
Okay. And, I know you weren't here yesterday, but if you have a chance, if you can, engage in that Vajrasattva practice, by watching it on YouTube. And you were there the week before, you were there last when we did the explanation. Yes. So you should do it while it's as fresh as it can be in your mind right now, because it's a very, very, very powerful practice. It's one of the most powerful practices.
Thank you.
Lance, I have a question that I think it's in the first couple of pages. Let me see. As you were summarizing everything, spiritual master. It's on page 6. Those who possess the 8 qualities possesses realization. What does that mean? Line 3.
Well, realization is, having a realization, having a recognition of something, that maybe had been obscured before, that you didn't recognize before. The realization that yes, you do have Buddha nature within yourself. There's a realization there when you really experience that. It may not be the realization that now you are the Buddha, that you are completely realized as a Buddha, a perfected Buddha. It may not be that, but you recognize your potential for that. So there's a realization there. So there's realizations, have levels to them and so on like that. So it's a simple word, and you can look it up in a dictionary, but it's really a recognition of something. But
okay, I think I was more, when I was reading it, it was more of like, I think the question is, maybe I'm having trouble asking it the right way. Is like, you feel an inclination towards something, like something spiritual. Like you have some kind of innate awareness.
Well, that can be a realization.
That's
that
what
you realize that you're realizing that motivation that you've had, that yearning that you've had within yourself. There's a realization, oh yeah, I've had that yearning all my life.
Is that ego though, to feel that and be able to describe it? It feels almost like so another thing it says, do not be attached to peace. And I know I'm maybe being over analytical in relation to the attainment of Buddhahood, right? So the idea of like, we talk about doing good to do good because like almost virtue signaling, right? Some people do that actually.
Well, you got to remember this. We got to go back to, one of the very beginning things that we talk about, and that all this is mind. All this is conceptual. Everything that we're going through is conceptual. Peace is a concept.
Mm-hmm.
and that we can get attached to peace. And then so attached that when something comes and disturbs us, that we lose that peace because we have this attachment. The real peace would be something happens to disturb us, but meanwhile, we don't lose that inner peace, that peace of mind, that inner peace of mind. That's what we're talking about, and it's indescribable. That's what the Dharmakaya is. When you get that true nature, nothing can disturb it. That's when we talk about the Vajra, the Dorje, the indestructible wisdom, the indestructible compassion, the indestructible wisdom. All of that is indestructible within ourselves, and it has no other words to it. Anything is going to fail it.
That's helpful. I was literally misunderstanding that word. That's helpful what you just said. I understand. That makes sense. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to say hi to Karina. I'm happy to see her here. Hi.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I'm late, but thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to Karina because she just joined us. Bernie, would you like to say something?
The original question was about the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, or we just sort of conversation.
Well, we were talking about we were talking about chapter 2. We were talking about precious human life and
Right.
what thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma.
What I've said before is that I just have to think back to, and I'm not sure I'm not the only one, but when I first started practicing, first got interested in Buddhism, was back in the 70s. And there were almost no teachers in this country. And there was very little in the way of printed books to study. And if for anybody who wanted to learn about Buddhism, it was a hard road. There was Daisetsu Suzuki and there was Krishnamurti and there were some things like that, but it was pretty thin going. And then, of course, later in the 70s and more in the 80s and 90s, more and more teachers became available. So I'm always grateful for the knowledge that the Dharma is here today. And I can't see any catastrophe that would make it go away tomorrow, but it certainly could diminish. The interest on the part of people diminished. I'm sure the Dharma would diminish as well. So I know what it was like before the Dharma was available, and I know what it's like now. And that's one of the factors in the 8 thoughts that there's I divide it up in 3 ways. First, you got to have the interest in the Dharma. If you don't have the interest, all the Dharma in the world being out there ain't going to affect you. Let's 90% of, at least 90% of the people in this country, they're interested in the women's soccer team missing their penalty kick. So they're not interested in the Dharma. The next thing is the Dharma has to be available. And the last thing, of course, is you have to practice it. So you got to bring those 3 things. You have to have the ability to practice it, rather. And this past week, since I've had my cold, my ability to practice really has been cut into a lot. I've been doing the practice, but I really can't say I get much benefit out of it when my head is fuzzy and I can't concentrate because my throat is sore and all that. So I appreciate it. I know one day I will not be able to practice. I'll be sick in bed. Maybe I'll have some sort of disease, and my practice days will be over. So the opportunity to practice now, because the practice is available and I'm able to do it and I'm interested in it, is very important.
Do you have a level of, the word that we use is samadhi. Do you have a level of samadhi that you've worked for and that you've been able to stabilize?
Definitely, my mind is quieter.
And cannot be destroyed?
My mind is quieter since during the practice of meditation, my mind is quieter than it used to be usually. Of course, that depends on circumstances. Sometimes I'm upset about something, but yeah, obviously my practice has improved over the years. I don't know how you put a number on that, but
Do you feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
you
You know
take
how
that practice? Do you feel like you take that mindfulness of that practice with you wherever you go?
my mind's quieter usually off the cushion as well. Certainly, it carries over into daily life. I noticed that the first month I started practicing, I would be doing mindfulness practice in my dormitory in college, and then when I would get up and walk to buy my stuff in the store, then wow, it's the world is a different place after you meditate. It's the what originally got me hooked on meditation, the fact that I could get something out of the practice that would carry over into my daily life. So that was a big part of getting started on the practice of meditation way back in the day.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a lot to be said about, the first experience of being a human being in whatever realm it is as a human being. Our first kiss, the first time we do this, the first time we do that, the first time we experience this, the first time we experience that is something that stays with us. If we are quiet for a few minutes, we can go right back to that experience and maybe smell something that was happening or some music that was playing at that time or just the emotional feeling that was happening at that very moment. You can relive that. But it's doing it over and over and again that becomes kind of ordinary and mundane. But nevertheless, and talking about the meditation, that's where the work is, to be able to stabilize it so that it's not lost to just our memory, but it stays with us all the time.
Well, they say that so much about a lot of things about exercise. Motivation is what gets you started. Dedication is what keeps you going. It's gotta be more than motivated. You gotta be dedicated to do anything in this life.
Well,
And
devotion, I think, is a strong word that motivates me. Is I look at it as devotion.
oh yeah, devotion to the teacher, devotion to the practice. But it's got to be more than an emotional state. It's got to be something that's a commitment on your part, I think.
Yes.
I mean, I guess people differ. I can't really speak for everybody, but if emotions change, emotions are fickle. They change from day to day. If your practice is based on your emotional state, it's going to go up and down. If you are dedicated to something, if you have a commitment, you make a commitment to something, that's what carries through. At least that's the way it works for me.
Yes, I agree, and it goes back to what Zara was asking about, with the peace, the attachment to peace, and what that means, and how we have to rethink the way that our attachments work, our aversions work, because our
Well,
emotions are part of our survival technique, but they're also part of what holds us back. But there's another level to this that is what we are aspiring to get to.
right. Well, as far as attachment to peace goes, people can have really positive things in meditation, and then the next time they sit down to meditate, they want to recreate what happened last time.
Right,
And that becomes an obstacle.
right.
When you try to recreate the good experience you had last time, it works the other way too. If you had a bad experience and you fear it'll be bad the next day, it's exactly the same thing. You gotta approach everything fresh every time.
Yes. There's actually There's a chapter in here that is the antidote to the attachment of peace
You mean in the Jewel Ornament?
and the
right?
Jewel Ornament of Liberation.
Yeah, that's supposedly a problem for people who are attached to the level of arhats. They attach to the peace of nirvana.
Right.
That is, well, that's a much more profound state than probably any of us have experienced yet, but we can all experience it on a different level. You can have very peaceful, blissful experiences in meditation and then get attached to it. But as I've been told, that's like driving somewhere and getting out and hugging the signpost. So you got to let go. You got to keep on traveling. You can't just get out. And when you see the sign on the beltway that says I-95 New York, you don't get out and stand by the sign of the sign. So.
Well, that's a good illustration, and actually, Chapter 7 in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation is dedicated to this. That's what it talks about: the attachment to pleasure of peace, and it's explaining. It goes into talking about loving kindness and compassion. So you can read about it in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. You know, it's outlined in the outline book. You can look at it there and get familiar with it. So yes. So that's the magic, I think, of the Dharma teaching, is that all these different, aspects of being a human being are addressed within the Dharma, and that's part of the genius of the Buddha, and the Buddha, not so much as a human being, not so much the incarnate Buddha, but the Buddhas that came after. It's all part of the Buddha. It's all part of the awareness, all part of the awakening, that we become part of the Buddha community. And that's what begins to come up when we are able to stabilize our shamatha meditation, that calm abiding. It's what comes up out of that, what arises out of that wisdom that comes out of that. That's the Buddha nature within ourselves, seeing that it is within ourselves and saying, I never read this. I never thought that before. But all of a sudden, something triggers and this wisdom comes out, this compassion comes out, this articulation comes out that you never expected or experienced before. But you got to get to that point of quiet to be able to get to there. Gary, how about you? We've been talking about the precious human life, and how has this discussion, how has your practice helped you to experience, to have realization, or has there been no realization? How's this land on you? What do you think about this?
Well, it helps me get the junk out of my head, the storm of life. I look at things, I process things differently. I'm aware of what's going on in the world because we should be. But
have the prayers helped you to do that processing? The practices help you to do those?
All the practices help me focus and help me not to ruminate on the other things that are swirling around me. There are certain things in life that we're obliged to pay attention to as human beings, as citizens, as things like that. But what happens, and what I've been a part of my life, because it's the culture of it all, is we ruminate on it and we argue about it. I find myself being more and more aware of the things that I need to be aware of that are happening in the world around me, that I may have to make decisions about in one way or another at some point. But less and less, and I'm still very much a work in progress here. I ruminate less. I obsess less over them. I don't wring my hands over things that I can't immediately resolve. And my meditation helps quiet that storm and helps get it on the proper shelf away from the center of my thinking, so that I can be quiet. So I can find that that what I call that magnificent silence. That's a term that I applied to myself. And just be.
Do you find yourself dedicating more time to that, or committing more time to this process?
But yes, sometimes it's 5 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour. Today I was meditating, and I found myself lost in time. I didn't realize how much time had passed. And things would come in and out of my head. But what has happened is, instead of grasping, clinging to them, I believe is the term of art that we use, they would dance off of my head. I would let them go. They were there, and then they were gone. I didn't let them grab me. I just gently let them go, and found quietude again and focus. Some days are better than others. It's like I say, it's work in progress, but it's a matter of getting all the junk of life out of my head. The great storm that we're all working through.
Okay, well, thank you. So everything we've been talking about, basically has to do with this second chapter, the chapter on precious human life, the working basis. This is what we have to deal with, but part of the realization, part of the problem is that it's very difficult to do this alone by ourselves. I don't think many of us would have the wherewithal, either the karmic seeds or the intelligence or the depth of introspection or logic or whatever, to be able to discover all these things ourselves and to be able to articulate all this ourselves. It's been pointed out to us. It's been brought to us. We may have made the initial steps to seek that teacher, whatever it is, the book or the presence of a teacher, to bring it to us, but we needed to have that objective person, that the contributions of that other person or other people, other teachers, to help bring this out in ourselves. And then we begin to see all these things within ourselves. So this is chapter 3 of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So, Karina, I didn't want to ignore you. Did you want to comment anything on what we've been talking about?
Can you ask one more question about that?
Well, I wanted to know if your practice, if being a human being, have you recognized yourself as a human being, a better human being than before you understood the Dharma, that before you understood spirituality? And has your study of spirituality, whether it was in the Eastern tradition and the Hindu tradition or whatever, or the Buddhist tradition, has it helped you?
Yes, sure. It's help, and I have an amazing experience with Hindu traditional. And this is experience be very, very powerful, very positive. And sure, I wanna come back to this feeling, would have again same mind and holy mind. Yeah, it's amazing, sure.
And do you see that it takes, practice after practice after practice, and you have to continually support it and reinforce it.
Yeah, you need to practice and you need to be good human being. What get some this samadhi? No, I think so. It's like not only from meditation, but from your like what you're doing in this world. It's how you karma good. Like this is make you feel very, very powerful and very happy.
I know in the you studied some of the Hindu tradition.
Yeah.
Did you have good success in the Hindu tradition? Did you have meditative experience in that?
Actually, I don't meditate. I just sing. I think so kirtans and my good karma like make me have this experience like samadhi like all the time or nirvana all the time when you are just 100% positive and nobody can like break this positive or like make you feel bad. It's just comedy.
Well, how about the Buddhism? How do you feel about that in
Oh,
regard to meditation? Because
I like, yes, sure. It's now it's there. My experience be like they God show me what I can get. Like this be how to say not all version, yeah. And when you know like what this is what you can get when you meditate and when you're going to this stage and staying there like because you're going again follow to your emotion and again come and but here you can just come and be there not anymore follow to this is some jealous or greed. No, this is virtues.
I see. Do you recognize that there is a greater control in with the Buddhism, the meditation, that there needs to be a control, that you need to make a commitment, a choice to be able to do these things?
Yes. I little bit don't understand question like how I can answer all.
Well, I'm just separating the idea. I'm being able to compare, your Hindu experience with the singing and the dancing and the kirtan and so on
Yeah.
like that, which is all very enjoyable and very pleasurable, but with the Buddhism, it's more, there's not those elements like that, but it's more practicing, more doing the studying and so on like that.
Yeah, it's like visualization. But it's more than like in sound. Here more than you need to visualize. All this is process practice.
Okay. Well, good. It's good that everybody has shared some of their experience with us, and that's what we're trying to do, is to recognize that we have this precious human life, and in many ways we're experiencing similar things, the same things in some cases, and to get to where we are now, and then to get to the next step is a more of a commitment and more practice, more teaching and accepting the teachings and so on.
Yeah, practice is important, and I think so. Vipassana it's also very important. What you always do vipassana in your life and understand like what you thinking about what you're doing.
Yes.
This bring you faster to place when you want to be.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Lance, to your point, I just wanted to take a moment because you just brought up something that I feel like is tremendous. I just wanted to thank everyone who does show up every week, because it is actually for me a blessing to have this experience and have this group, like each one of you, your time and stuff actually is so impactful and makes me a better human being. Like I have joy to come to these meetings and each one of you sharing your anecdotes, and Lance, obviously you being our instructor, like I literally, it just makes me healthier. It's like doing a weightlifting session or a cardio session. Like I just want to just express gratitude to everyone because like, I think, Lance, what you're saying is so tremendous, in that it's even showing up for ourselves, but not realizing what we may be doing for someone else once they leave these sessions, in this togetherness. I think it's so profound that it's well beyond just the time. And so thank you all.
Yeah, I
Yes,
second
thank
that
you.
big time. Yeah, it makes a big impact having you all here for me too. It's really cool.
Very good. Yes, thank you. For me too.
And I'm with you, Sarah. I think without this Sangha, if that's what it is, I'd be lost. And that we, as a group, we show up, and it's hugely important to me.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be great numbers, but the enthusiasm and the commitment of the people, that's what's really, really, really important. And there's many people, who tune into the YouTube later on who can't be with us at this particular time. So it's not just the people who are present right now. There's many other people who are watching and who have subscribed to this channel and so on. So we're thankful for those people as well, and know that many people are tuning into the vibration. So, in the time that we have left, I just want to introduce the next chapter, chapter 3, which is the spiritual master, which is the teacher. So the teacher comes in the form of a human being. The teacher comes in the form of books. It comes in the form of practices. It comes many different ways and so on. But mostly we would say that it is another human being who is there to point us in the right directions and to help us when we begin to lose our way, when we get lost, and to help us put our wheels back on the track, so to speak, and to give us goals, obtainable goals, and not to put too much of a goal so much in front of ourselves that we miss the smaller goals that we need to accomplish to get to the big goals and so on. So as we've said many times, it's a process. So it's the spiritual master who stays with us and helps us to do that. And the spiritual master may change from time to time. You may go from one teacher to another teacher and so on like that. And that's perfectly fine. But we never lose the devotion and the love and the appreciation for the first teachers that we meet. We all stay on the same path. We're all on the same path and so on too. So to recognize that is very important, to give ourselves an appreciation, a realization of how strong that is. And in turn, that helps us to be a teacher ourselves, because that is part of the process. Sometimes we're the student, but sometimes we become the teacher. Sometimes we're the teacher for ourselves, and sometimes we're the teacher for other beings. So to recognize that. So chapter 3 in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation helps us to identify that. So whether you're looking at this outline book or you're reading the chapter in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, it bears your attention. You should make an effort to study these and over again, and to remind yourself of these things, and to talk about these things, and to ask questions about these things. The most fundamental of the lessons that we learn from the teacher, from the contributory cause, if you will, of the spiritual master, are the five poisons. The five poisons make up all these different emotions that we have. So many different emotions. The story goes that the Buddha Shakyamuni, when he was teaching, when he was alive 2,600 years ago, and he was going from village to village all through northern India and so on, and he's meeting all these people, and he's assembling all these people who are coming for his teachings, and he's having private conversations with many people and so on. And they're all telling him, he's asking them about who they are and what their life is like, and they want to know how can they help themselves if they have these obstacles, and can the Buddha help them to understand these obstacles and so on. And so it came to be said that there was 84,000 emotions, that the Buddha met so many different people, and there were all these different emotions, and that they became 84,000 emotions that he was helping people to understand. Now, of course, not everybody was experiencing all 84,000 of these emotions. Maybe we're experiencing one or two at a time, but then the next day we might experience a couple others or something like that. So the point is that there was this great mass of emotions that we have, and that they can get broken down. They can get what we would say compartmentalized into smaller groups. And those groups kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller until they got down to the 5 poisons. So we've talked about this many times, but there's a few people with us now who may not have heard this teaching, who understand this about the 5 poisons. So the 5 poisons is that there is ignorance, is the total, is like we don't even know what we don't know. We're ignorant of these things. And because we're ignorant of these things, we can create delusions for ourselves that either we do know or that we don't know, but we create these lies for ourselves. We create these stories about ourselves that we do know these things, and we begin to believe the lies. We begin to lead our life like a lie. And we're doing things that we really shouldn't be doing because we didn't have the strength to be able to say, oh, I don't know, and I need help, and I need to find a teacher to help me to do this. So ignorance is the big poison that we fall into as human beings, that we think we can know everything, and that many of us think we do know everything. So that's the big one, is ignorance. And the second one would be desire. And desire is that we're attached to this life, that we want to have this life, that we want to have all these possessions, we want to have all these responsibilities, we want to have all the fruits of these responsibilities. We want to have the house, we want to have the car, we want to have the job, we want to have the family. We want to have all these different things that our ego identifies with. When they say, well, who is Lance? Well, Lance is this. He's got all these different things and so on. And this is who Lance is, and I'm very much detached to that. But it keeps us, but those attachments, you see, are keeping us from the awareness that all this is all just a fabrication of our mind. We've just allowed our ego to run away with itself and develop this persona of who we think we want to be, who we like to be, who's easy for us to be, and so on. And it just leads us in this very confused state of wanting to have things, of attachment, of lust, of passion, and so on like that. So this is a very brief explanation of desire, that we desire this life. We wanted to be born as a human being. So we'll go into the dynamics of how that comes. We'll talk about that later, but we wanted to have this life. We became the architect of this life. We designed this life for ourselves. And then once we have the life, then we have to keep it moving. We have to keep it engineered. We have to keep working on it. And when things break down, we have to fix them. And we create more lies. We create more stories about what our life is and so on in order to be able to do that. So our life becomes this network of all these fabrications, all these egocentric fabrications of who we are, who we want to be, and so on like that. So this is one of the 5 poisons, is desire. The third one is hatred. Hatred is the anger that we have for the things that we cannot control, the things that we feel that are a threat to us. Maybe it's ourselves that we're angry at, but we lash out and we have this anger at other beings and so on. And we don't recognize that it's happening like that. You know, our personalities develop that sometimes we just get grumpy. Sometimes we get unhappy. Sometimes we get dissatisfied all the time. Sometimes we just don't like certain people. And because we don't know how to deal with them, we are attached to who we are. And we say, oh, I'm good, I'm pure, this is the way to be. And if you're not like me, then I'm going to have anger towards you. I'm going to hate you. And I'm going to try and find other people who will be like me. And then we can hate all those other people over there. So we create these divisions between ourselves as human beings or as other parts of nature. That, oh, I'm a human being and I'm a special human being. But there's an ordinary human being and I'm better than they are because they don't have the same kind of job as I do, or they don't have the same kind of spiritual practice that I do. They're not as good as me. So we create these hatreds, these walls that we put up between people in order to satisfy our ego. So these are the 3 main poisons: ignorance, desire, and hatred. So you need to think about these things. And it takes the spiritual teacher to help us to recognize these things. So maybe you're hearing this thing for the first time, or maybe you've heard these things many, many times over and over again. But we have to continually recognize these poisons that are working together, that are making up all these emotions that we have. And these emotions are like a ring through our nose, and we're led around by this ring, you know, like an oxen who has got the plowshare and is digging up the earth, and he's being led around by the person who is guiding him. So the person guiding him is like the ego of that animal, and he's being led around by this ring and forced to go in this direction and forced to go in that direction and so on. So we need to recognize the dynamic of what it is to be a human being like this. The next 2 emotions are, the first one is jealousy. And jealousy, or envy, sometimes we call it envy. So sometimes we feel like we're not qualified, we're not good enough to be the person that we want to be. We want to have the big house, we want to have the car, we want to have what our neighbor has, we want to have what our brother has, or what our other friends have, or what I see other people as I go out into the community and I see what they have, and I want to have that, but I'm not able to do it because I've kind of paralyzed myself because of my attachment to my neuroses of thinking I'm not good enough to have these things. The neuroses is that illness that we create for ourselves that tells us we're not good enough. And I have this fear to do that. I have this fear to do that. I have a fear of this and so on. And we begin to identify with those fears, that we become those fears, and we become a jealous person because we want these things, and this jealousy just stays with us in the back of our head and becomes a motivator for what it is that we're doing, a motivator for what it is that we're not doing. What we're not doing, we justify what we're not doing because of our jealousies, that we're not qualified to be able to have these things and so on. The next of the 5 poisons is greediness, is our greed. Our greed that we are able to do certain things. We have the ability to do certain things. And as a result, we accumulate the results of those things. Maybe it's power. Maybe it's responsibility. Maybe it's in our job. Maybe it's with our family. Maybe it's our big bank account. Maybe it's our big house. Maybe it's all the things that we want to have, and we want to have these things and we want more of them. And most importantly, we don't want to share it. We don't want to give it away. We're greedy. We want as much of it as we can have for ourselves. We don't want to share it. We become miserly. We become stingy. We have great ability, but we don't want to share it with anybody. So this emotion of this greediness, you see, takes over, and we become just these ugly beings who are controlled by their desires. They're creating hatred to say, oh, those people don't have what I have. They don't have the ability, and I'm not going to help them to have these things. So I'm just going to shut myself off and say, oh, we're the ones that have these things, and those are the people that don't. We're better than they are, and so on. So these 5 poisons build up all these different 84,000 emotions. So sometimes you can look at it as percentages. You can say, well, it's 5% greedy, and it's 10% jealousy, and it's 20% hatefulness, and it's another 20% of ignorance, and the rest is desire. Whatever it is, whatever combinations and so on. And these make up our personalities, our lives, and so on. And this is why there's so many different variations of this, and it's always changing. So today or this moment, it could be that mixture of those poisons, but then in another hour from now, it could change because something else happens in our lives. We get a phone call, somebody comes over and we see somebody, we think of something, and our emotion changes. Our emotions can change very quickly. So these things are not static. They don't stay the same for very long. They're always changing. So we have to be able to have a system in order to be able to evaluate where it is that we are. And it's hard for us to do that by ourselves. And this is why we rely on a spiritual master, on a teacher who shows us the 5 basic poisons, and then how all these things work together, how our ego works, so that we become the control of what it is that we're of these emotions, and not letting these emotions become the afflictions that cause us to suffer. When we talk about the 4 noble truths, the first noble truth is that all life has suffering. And the second one is that the cause of the suffering is our desire for this life. And with that desire comes the other poisons and so on. So in order for us to be able to understand and be able to control that, we have to be able to renounce all those causes, all those desires. We have to cut through them. And then it's the Eightfold Path that helps us to do that. So in order to manage all of this, we need to have a system. We need to have teachers to help us to control this. And for those of us who think that we can do this by ourselves, we suffer even more. We may think that we're doing good things, and maybe we have some good talents to be able to do some things, but we're only fooling ourselves. We're only compounding the issues because we get lost in thinking that we can know, thinking that we know these things. So these are the 2 very strong elements of being a human being that having a teacher helps us with. First, to recognize the afflictive emotions, all these different emotions that we go through. And to have somebody to point out and say, oh, well, you're just being emotional because of this. You're being emotional because of that. And then it teaches us to be able to look at it ourselves and say, oh, I'm feeling this way because of my emotion and so on. The other one, the big thing, is the mental fixation, the mental idea that we can know all these things ourselves, that we don't need to have this system. We don't need to have these teachers. We can figure this all out by ourselves, and that this will lead us away from all of our suffering, and that we need to do these things. So this is what we call the subtle obscuration of wisdom, that we think we can do these things. And this is where, like, the subtle obscuration of peace, oh, I want peace, and I'm working so hard to have peace, but I'm working at it and it makes me suffer, that I'm not producing the peace that I want, and I'm making myself work so hard for it that I have no leisure. I'm just working for this peace that never comes. So that's a fallacy. That's part of the subtle obscuration of wisdom, thinking that I can do this. So, of course, all this is just an introduction. All of this is just very simple for the first time for you to hear this. But the point is, you need to study some of this. You need to contemplate this. We have very limited time, and I have very limited ability to be able to communicate this to everybody. We need to individually take this into our studies. We need to read these things. This is why we have these books, to read these things, to study these things. So everything that I've just been saying is part of this book that we have here. It's on page 5. It's in part of chapter 3 of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. The next page here talks more about the spiritual master and the qualities of the spiritual master. Who do we look for to be a spiritual master? Who do we ask to be our spiritual master? And so the Jewel Ornament of Liberation gives us a guide to be able to look to see what that is. And basically, we're looking at everybody as being a guide for us. They're being a guide sometimes of what not to be, which is a very powerful teacher, but sometimes it's to what we should be, what we want to be, what we'd like to be. And then most of the time it's somewhere in the middle between all of those two extremes of what not to be and what we want to be. But we need to have a criteria. We need to have an intellectualization. We need to have a process of how to look for a spiritual guide, how to look for a spiritual teacher. So all this is in the book. And so I beg you all to take the time to do this. This becomes a series of meditations. This is something that you spend not just one session with, that you do this for 15 or 20 minutes or an hour, whatever you have time for, and then tomorrow you have another 15 or 20 minutes or another hour, whatever you have time for, and you continue it. And then you go to the next day and you continue it. This is how you build a process. We've talked about this many times, about how to structure a practice. So here is the content of what the practice is, of what this process is. So we talk about the opening prayers, that we're reminding ourselves of our motivation, why we're doing this. We're doing this for the enlightenment of other beings, ultimately, and that we study the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, because this is how we are accomplishing our Buddha nature, by recognizing how we do this, why we do this, and what it is that we're doing. So studying this becomes the answer to that. So for right now, we don't have much any time to go in any further unless somebody has a question that I can answer. What do you think about this?
Lance, this is Sarah, I'm gonna make it a goal this week to do what you just said. I'm gonna do the King of Aspirations once before Thursday, and then I'm gonna do what you just said about meditating, dedicating, like you just said. I'm just stating that out loud for accountability to you.
Well, good.
I'm giving myself homework while it's being recorded.
And that's exactly what the Samaya is. You know,
That's
when we
like
talk
I got
about
it recorded.
when we talk about taking Samaya, it's making a promise, but the one you're promising is to yourself.
That's correct. Yeah,
You know, you're the beneficiary of all this.
that's right. That's right. All right. That's just me stating an intention. Thank you for the inspiration, Lance.
You're welcome. I'm glad you're going to do it. Thank you. Anybody else going to take that vow? Take that Samaya?
What was the second part of it, Zara?
I'm gonna do the King of Aspiration. Gary mentioned he did it, so I'm gonna join the boat with him this week.
Well, yeah, what was the other part though? To do what?
So Lance said to take at the beginning, yeah, the book, the outline, and actually meditate on that. Like each of those is its own meditation things to contemplate on.
Cool.
Lance, do you want to be more specific or prescriptive on what, like, do you want to just, is there a highly specific action?
Yeah, just start at the beginning and start reading this and thinking about this. If you have the book, it's even better. But this outline is very good, really. And so I would start there. And then if you do have the book and you want more detail of what the outline simply provides, then you can go to the Jewel Ornament of Liberation and read a little bit there and come back to the outline. It's a process that takes a long time. I've read the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, I don't know how many times. I've read it mostly by just going to a particular section, reading a particular page or a particular group of stanzas or something like that. But I've also read it from cover to cover many times. And this is what it takes. There's no shortcut, you know, to be able to do this. Not everybody has the patience. Not everybody's going to be able to do it. And it doesn't mean that you're not a good person because you can't do that. But I will say that if you can do that and you don't do that, then you're only hurting yourself. But if you can't do it, it's okay. You meditate, you do what you can. You know, this is not, these practices are very detailed and they may not be for everybody. And we can talk about that one-on-one and help you to design a process for yourself that is going to be very satisfactory and that will lead you to where you want to get to go, you know, in this lifetime and maybe for the lifetimes to come. So there's no need to think that, oh, I'm not good enough.
Lance, I read the book. I got the book and read it, but I did not have the outline at the time. And from where I sit, it would have been much better if I'd had the outline to sort of guide me as I would just, from where I sit, I would recommend people to have, by all means, get the book. I think everyone should, but if everyone has the outline, to sort of move through the book with the outline in hand, I think it would have. I'm going to read it again, but I think I would have had a more effective first reading of it if I'd used the outline. The outline is very good.
Well, thank you. Well, this is the advice of the teacher, you know, and not that I'm the teacher, but the teacher is, you know, the Buddha is all the masters. This is part of the process. So thank you.
Lance, where does one get the book?
You can order it. You have to order it from Amazon or someplace like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's not an easy book to read. I mean, it's like a college textbook. You know, it seems very dry as you're reading it, you know, but
Well, it seems to me there's got to be a way to, I mean, look at the contributory cause, the spiritual master that we were just speaking of some, 10 minutes ago. I mean, it's very nice to have these numbered bullets, but I need a way to fill in the blanks, to think about them. I can't, there's no point in me telling myself that I'm going to meditate on how why I'm suffering because of obscuration. I mean, I'll give it 10 minutes of thought and that'll be it for me. But if can it be expounded upon in the book is what I'm asking.
well, yes, but I also have to say that this is what we've been doing in our Buddhism 101 classes over the years. And for those of you who have been with us for year after year after year after year, going around in the cycles that we go through, every time we go through the cycle, doesn't it mean more to you? Don't you have more to understand? Gary, you've been doing this for a number of years.
100% for me.
Yeah. And I know Bernie knows this because he's been, Bernie's been my teacher many times on many subjects, over and over again. And things that he told me years ago took years for it to click in my mind before, I realized that this is what Bernie was saying before, and so on like that. So, but we gotta engage somewhere.
Thank you.
Sarah, I'll take the pledge with you. And if we break our Samaya, let me know and I'll cut this out of the video.
All right, well, great.
Karina, you want to join us?
Oh, yes.
I'm
Exactly.
Karina has the translation in Russian.
Yeah, I already read 4 times
cool.
in translation or 5. Like, yeah, it's in Russian. It's amazing. Yeah,
Cool.
that's every day.
Okay, we got 3 people, Lance.
Yeah.
And Gary's been reading it. So that's 4.
Okay.
And Bernie could have written it.
Probably. I'm good about this. We're going to generate a lot of goodness this week.
All right. Well, very good. Well, thank you all very much for listening to this and joining in the conversation. And, part of, we've said this many times, part of the conversation is to hear our habitual tendencies and to change our habitual tendencies. So I think everyone here has said that, they come from a place, but they're trying to get to another place that is better than from where they came from. And the Dharma has been the vehicle in which they are moving from the one place to the next. So that's the realization that here is a system that we can follow that is pure and that we all can relate to and understand. All right. Well, thank you. And if you should dig this out of your notes, wherever it is, the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, and include this in your study practice. Okay. All right. So now we'll do our dedication. So tonight we'll do the dedication by Lord Jigden Sumgun on page 21 and 22 in the book that I have. But the dedication by Lord Jigden Sumgun. And this particular dedication has everything in it. This is a very, very comprehensive prayer, very excellent prayer. So this was written 800 years ago by the founder of the lineage that we are part of, the Drikung Kagyu lineage. So very powerful to have lasted this long and will continue for many, many, many generations to come. So we recite out loud together. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very, very much.